Besides Ryan Walters, this may be the other story I heard the most about this week, and people wanted to make sure I covered it, so I'm going to do that. Uh, I want to show you this guy here. I actually don't know how to pronounce his name. It's like Scott Cooter. Um, I'm not sure. Cooper, Kupor. But this is the guy who just got confirmed at the beginning of July to run the Trump administration's Office of Personnel Management. He's like the guy in charge of HR for like the federal government. And this week they issued a memo that is very disturbing. Now, this guy, Scott, he doesn't have the ability to change the law, but he can tell everyone, hey, everyone, we just want to let you know what the law says about what you can do at work. And it's not written for Christians, this memo, but with a bunch of winks, it's very much designed to speak to Christians. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So here is the memo in question. It's a 5-page document that Scott sent to everybody. And let's look at the title here, Memorandum. What's the subject line? Protecting religious expression in the federal workplace. And so you have to read through like the first 2 pages of BS before we get to the point, which is that there are now a series of things that this memo is going to outline for what you can and cannot do in the federal workplace. And there's 2 I want to draw your attention to. Let's look at the first one right here. Display and use of items used for religious purposes or religious icons. Let's read through it, then we'll talk. Employees should be permitted to display and use items used for religious purposes or icons of a religiously significant nature, including, but not limited to, Bibles, artwork, jewelry, posters displaying religious messages, and other, what's that word, indicia? I've never seen that word, of religion, such as crosses, crucifixes, and mezuzahs on their desks, on their person, and in their assigned workspaces. So basically, if you have your cubicle at work and you're working for the government, guess what? You could totally decorate your cubicle with all the religious paraphernalia you want. You want a giant cross on your desk? You want it in the back of your little workspace? It's totally fine. That's what this is saying. In the past, you might say, maybe keep the divisive stuff at home because you're at work. But no, we want you to know all of that stuff is fine. And by the way, it wasn't illegal in the past. If you had a Bible on your desk, I don't think anyone would have noticed. And if you were wearing like a cross necklace or a yarmulke or a hijab, whatever, that's your religion, no one really cares. But what this memo is doing is saying, we want to clarify for everybody that basically anything goes when it comes to religion in your workspace. It's totally fine. You could put up whatever you want. And here's the thing. You can imagine where this can go wrong. What happens if a Christian puts up a sign or a Bible verse that implies that everyone who's not Christian is going to burn in hell for all of eternity? I mean, that's pretty much the whole Bible. But like, what if they put up a thing that says, convert or else? What happens if you put up a sign? I know some of you are thinking this already. What if there's a Satanist who works for the federal government, puts up a sign saying Satan loves you? Is that okay now, or is that not okay? If you put up the 7 fundamental tenets from the Satanic Temple, which are 7 things that are pretty much not controversial and tell you to be a nice person, but it does have the word satanic in it, is that going to be a problem? Because this memo says it won't be, but you could tell how this could get divisive very quickly. What happens if you put up, what happens if you have a couple different Christians at work who are super devout and now they're in a contest to see who can like out-Jesusify the other? Someone puts up a small Bible verse by their desk. The other puts up a giant poster. The other puts up an even bigger cross. We see this. You think I'm joking, but every time there's like a giant cross put up in like Memphis or something, there's some other city in Mississippi that will spend $250,000 to raise a bigger cross because religion is nothing to them except like a dick measuring contest. So what happens when that battle occurs? what happens if non-traditional religions decide they want to get in on this? Because the same rules do not apply to Muslims, to Satanists, to atheists. And I'll have more to say about atheists in a second. Are people going to see that as controversial in a way that putting up a Bible verse is fine? Here's another concern. What happens if someone puts up a Bible verse that says, gay people deserve to be executed by the government? Because those verses exist. They're called the clobber verses. You can look those up online, a series of out of context Bible verses that people use to justify being bigots against LGBTQ people. Are people now allowed to put those things up? Like, there's so many ways this could go wrong. And then it gets even worse, because what happens if it's not just a random person at work putting up this religious stuff? What if it's your boss or your supervisor, whoever it is? What if they start putting religious stuff at their desk? Because if you want to talk to them about a raise or something of importance, are you going to feel pressure? Are you going to feel obligated to be like, haha, I love Jesus too? So am I getting that promotion? Like, there is a coercive element to all of this too. Even if that is explicitly forbidden, because that would be discriminatory, how do you know if it's your religious differences or your work performance, the merit of your work, that's leading to whatever happens then? Like, if you don't get a raise, is it because you're the wrong religion or because you don't have what it takes to get the promotion? And how are you going to be able to tell the difference? You could see these things happening. And obviously this memo doesn't really concern any of that. But that rule that I just showed you is not the reason this memo made headlines this week. The reason this made headlines is, if I can find this, there was rule number 1 about the religious icons on your desk. But if I scroll down, here's the one, number 3, conversations between federal employees. Let's read through this because this is troubling. Employees may engage in conversations regarding religious topics with fellow employees, including attempting to persuade others of the correctness of their own religious views, provided that such efforts are not harassing in nature. Holy shit. Employees may also encourage their coworkers to participate in religious expressions of faith, such as prayer, to the same extent they would be permitted to encourage coworkers participate in other personal activities. You want to go play pickleball this weekend? Sure. Hey, you want to go to church with me? Or else. The constitutional rights of supervisors to engage in such conversation should not be distinguished from non-supervisory employees by the nature of their supervisory roles. So yeah, your boss can try to tell you to come to church too. Your boss can now have religious arguments with you in the workplace. However, unwillingness to engage in such conversations may not be the basis of workplace discipline. So there's so much wrong with this. Oh my God. I'm going to scroll down. I'll come back to this in a second. In this memo, if you scroll down, that was page 3. If you scroll down to like page 5, they have an appendix that has examples of all this stuff. And in the section for conversations between federal employees, look at this example of what's okay. During a break, an employee may engage another in polite discussion of why his faith is correct and why the non-adherent should rethink his religious beliefs. However, if the non-adherent requests such attempts to stop, the employee should honor the request. There, did we clear it up for you all? Great. So imagine the most annoying Christian you know. Now imagine that person works with you, because the Trump administration is now giving that idiot full license to use you for theological target practice. On the clock. Taxpayers are paying for you to maybe get converted. Now, the rule says harassment isn't permitted, sure, but like, what's the difference between someone trying to tell me I need Jesus in my life and someone saying, hey, buddy, can I talk to you about Jesus? I don't know, is that harassment? I would find that to be harassing. No, I don't want to talk to you about your stupid book club. Is what I said harassing? Like, who is in the wrong here? The person who constantly asks me if I want to hear about their favorite book, or me saying, "No, I don't want to talk to you. Go away. I have work to do." I don't know how you keep track of that. There's no acceptable way for Christians to tell their colleagues they deserve to be tortured for all of eternity, but there's a way to escape that fate if they read your favorite book. There's no nice way to do that. It's always harassing. I don't care how nice and polite they sound when they're doing it. It is a form of harassment in the same way if I came up to a Christian and said, "Hey, you know how you believe in a bunch of bullshit? Listen, let me try to direct you to this book that tells you everything you believe is wrong. That thing you based your whole life around, yeah, it's just a waste of your time." If I did that in the workplace to a religious colleague, I should be in trouble because that's not acceptable. But apparently, if a Christian does it, it's totally fine as long as it's just mild harassment, not full blown harassment. Like, at what point does it cross the line? And who gets to make the call to say something crossed the line? I don't know anymore. I imagine a lot of federal workers don't want anybody talking to them about their religious beliefs, along with other controversial topics. When I was reading comments about this particular memo, so many federal workers chimed in online saying things like, "I worked in the federal government for 20 years, 30 years, and by and large, I did not know the religious beliefs of most of my colleagues. I did not know who they voted for because when we were at work, believe it or not, we had a job to do and we focused on it. And maybe if we got really close to each other outside of work, we like to hang out, maybe then you would know something about them, about their religious beliefs, political views, favorite TV shows, whatever. But when you're at work and you're working with hundreds of people, no, you can totally live your life, have your career in that space, and really not know what other people think about these very private matters." And yet this memo is like, they don't have to be private anymore. If you're a Christian, you can let everybody know about it. So there's a reason you don't have those conversations in the workplace, like religion, politics. The same reason you don't really want to do it at Thanksgiving dinner. A lot of times, it's like we are here to keep the peace. We don't want to have fights. We are here for a greater cause. Let's try to focus on that. But, and you would think that's especially true for the federal government, because you work alongside people who may have very different opinions from you. And rather than insert anything into those relationships to make it harder to work together, your job, if you're a boss of one of these spaces in the federal government, is to unify everybody under your common cause. Oh, we work at the EPA. It's our job to protect the environment. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what you do in your spare time. I don't care, Ryan Walters, what you like to watch on your computer. When you're here, we're here to do this sort of work. So let's focus on that. That's what it should be. So the rules, this memo doesn't stop workplace harassment. It like puts a jolt in it. It's going to make it even worse. It doesn't make life better for Christians, by the way, because they already have the right to be annoying. But it does make life a lot worse for everyone who's now going to be a target in those workspaces because their Christian colleagues, some of them, are going to see them as nothing more than targets in need of saving. So instead of eliminating friction from the workplace, the Trump administration is now inserting friction, creating it where it doesn't need to be. And I want to stress, this memo does not change any laws, but it emphasizes different things to let everyone know you have permission to be a religious asshole to your colleagues at work. That's the disturbing thing. So the Washington Post had an article about this, and one of the things they pointed out is that all of this is completely unnecessary. In fact, there was a previous administration that told federal agencies you cannot suppress employees' private religious speech in the workplace, by and large. Guess which administration said that? I will show you. That was the Clinton administration in 1997. That's the rule that's still in play. That's what the memo said all those years ago. It said, yeah, if you want to talk about religion in the workplace, you're allowed to do it. You can't be punished for that. But what's the Trump administration doing? They're saying, hey, you know how it's okay to do that? Yeah, we're letting you know you can definitely do it. Wink, wink. So go for it. Try to convert everybody. Now, Republicans will likely argue this is not about elevating Christianity. Nothing in the memo is about Christianity. It applies equally to all beliefs. But we know this administration openly promotes Christianity above all other religions, and it pretends like anti Christian bias is a very real problem. The Trump people even created an anti Christian bias task force because you know who has it really hard in our country right now? Christians. Also, white people. Like, there's no reason this memo should be seen as anything but a cover for white evangelicals who don't understand boundaries. I already mentioned this is going to be harder for Muslims and Satanists and people who belong to non-Christian religions. One, because they don't do this sort of evangelizing at work thing to begin with. But if they do, if they treat Christians the way Christians are now allowed to treat everybody else, I feel like they're going to get in trouble for it. And some of you are already thinking, what about malicious compliance, right? What if you're an atheist and you really want to play this same game? What if you start telling Christian colleagues they should stop believing in God? Well, this is where it gets interesting because that same memo, let me show you one other thing here. What the memo says is we are just applying, look at this, federal employees enjoy broad religious expression rights in the workplace thanks to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, scroll down here for a second. Title VII defines religion to include all aspects of religious observance and practice as well as belief, not just practices that are mandated or prohibited by a tenet of the individual's faith. However, this is the key. Title VII does not cover all beliefs. For example, social, political, or economic philosophies and mere personal preferences are not religious beliefs within the meaning of the statute. So here's my question to you reading that. What is atheism? If, like me, you would argue atheism is not a religion, like off is not a TV channel, like bald is not a hair color. If atheism is not a religion, it's a personal philosophy. And according to this memo, if atheists do what Christians are now allowed to do, this memo does not protect atheists because you're not promoting your religion anymore. You're promoting your personal preference, and that's not protected. And you know the Trump administration's not going to help you in that case. So that's disturbing. I'll show you one more thing here, which is that a lot of church-state separation groups have already weighed in on this, but I want to show you what the Freedom from Religion Foundation said. These shocking changes essentially permit workplace evangelizing, but we're still allow supervisors to evangelize underlings and federal workers to proselytize the public they serve. This is the implementation of Christian nationalism in our federal government. Yeah, I agree. It's disturbing. It's especially disturbing that supervisors can do this stuff as well. I don't know if there's any recourse to fight this, including lawsuits. And I hate the idea that I want an atheist to challenge this or a Satanist. Yeah, why don't you try preaching to your colleagues in the federal workforce and see what happens? If you get in trouble, great, we can have a lawsuit. Like, I don't think it's fair to put that burden on those people and make them risk losing their jobs over this. But I feel like it's common sense to know this is a dumb idea. But this is the Trump administration, and it's this office, this particular office that sent out this memo, Scott Cooper of the Office of Personnel Management. He just got confirmed in early July. He's trying to make his mark, and the way everyone in the Trump administration tries to make their mark is by making Christians know, hey, I'm on your side, screw everybody else. So that's what this is. All right, I'll pause there for a bit. What questions we got here? Are they allowed to post hate speech? Like, will there be a fight between gay people or abominations that need to be put to death Bible verses versus no hate speech allowed? Great question. I don't know, because I'm sure there is a prohibition on, if someone said, death to these people, I'm pretty sure that that's not allowed. But if you post a Bible verse that is interpreted as like, oh, this is just God saying in an ideal world, you would not lie with a man as you lie with a woman or something, are they going to be able to get away with it? And like the correct answer is just don't do Bible verses in the office. Leave that shit at home. No one cares about it. No one wants to see it here. And it applies to everybody. No, this is a question we're going to find out very soon. You're going to see that story soon enough. I always tell people the test for religious freedom is, would you be okay if a Satanist did it? If the answer is no, then you can't do it either. And I've made this point as well, which is if Satanists, Muslims, if everyone had the same rights that Christians did, not on paper, but like in actual practice, Christians would be furious. Evangelical, right-wing Christians, conservative Christians, they would be furious because they treat neutrality as persecution. They believe they are better than everybody else, and the laws and all their rights should reflect that their beliefs are special, but everyone else's beliefs are second tier. You know what I mean? And so I get your point here. I wish this is the philosophy everyone adhered to, but they don't, because I feel this way about politics too. If Democrats did the shit that Republicans are doing right now, then Republicans would have a right to be as angry as they always are on Fox News all the time. And I think Dan Savage, the columnist, said this, like, I wish Democrats would stop trying to take the high road. Democrats do not exist to serve as a good example for Republicans. No, if they're going to play dirty, you play dirty. If they're going to gerrymander, you gerrymander. And if Christians are going to do this, I wish Satanists and Muslims and other religions do this stuff too. I don't think it's fair to ask them to do that, because I think the non-Christians are the ones who would get in trouble for acting the way Christians do. Can employers still enforce the old way if they chose? I believe the memo is saying, hey, supervisors, this is the way it is now. So you can't have a blanket, no discussion about religion in the workplace. The memo says, no, you're all allowed to do it and they can't stop you. So does this mean I can start engaging them in conversations about deconverting? I already answered that. Come on, buddy. It's a silly story, right? I know you don't want to believe way deep down. Like I said, I think if it's atheism you're promoting, this memo makes it clear we're not protecting that. I think they know that non-Christian religions are very much not in the habit of evangelizing in public. So they can totally pass a rule like this, pretend it's equal for everybody, with the full awareness that it's only conservative Christians who are going to take advantage of it. Is the federal government an at-will employer? Can they fire you and not give a legit reason? I feel like they have been doing that, but I actually don't know the answer to that. I feel like they have been firing everybody, though. Not at will, but they are treating us like at will anyway. Saw someone get fired in my office last week. Totally illegal. Yeah, who are you going to complain to? The Supreme Court? The federal government? I mean, I think Elie Mystal, the legal columnist, he wrote up his recap of the Supreme Court's last term. And he's like, why am I bothering to do this anyway? There is no rule of law anymore. If you're a Republican, you can get away with anything. And if you're not a Republican, then the rules don't apply to them. So we don't have a rule of law anymore. Why are we even playing this game?